Hi, I'm Nate the House Whisperer, and I want to talk about a pretty common question, which is what will it cost if I electrify everything in my life? And we're going to focus on the house, of course, being Nate the House Whisperer here. But we're going to do this in two parts. So this part is about figuring out a ballpark idea of what your heating and cooling costs are today, because that's the main thing that's going to shift. And then the second part, I will show you how to use a calculator so that you can figure out if you switch what kind of HVAC you have, what does that work out. But to use that calculator well, we need to have a decent idea of what current costs are so that we don't get the numbers really crooked later. So we'll dive into this. So what will my energy bills look like? Part one, finding current costs. So to do this, first you have to figure out what are you paying now for gas and electricity. So this is relatively simple. You need to go get the last year's worth of bills out or go online and find out how much you've paid for the last year for both gas and electric. And once you figure that out, you want to divide the total annual cost by the total annual usage, and that will be how much you are paying per unit of energy. And an important note in there too, you want to take a look at the gas meter fee because that you get to use towards this project because you won't have to pay it anymore. Okay, now to find current energy costs, these are bills from my house. And you want to go look at what the usage is. So every bill is going to be different. You're going to have to figure this out, but it's in there. The main thing you are looking for, see this last 12 months use in kilowatt hours at 10,285. That is what you want to find. That is your total annual usage. So that's your usage, and then you want to add up what the bills have cost for the last year, and you're going to divide that out. So you take your usage divided by the cost, and that's your cost per kilowatt hour all in. So this could be really confusing. You're going to see the little pieces parts. To me, this is the simplest and cleanest way to figure out what you're actually paying. But that's how you can do that one. And then for your gas, so this makes it pretty easy in my bill, total annual use. More than I would like, frankly, living in a 185-year-old house. But those are the numbers you need along with how much you pay for a year. So you divide that out. Now also you want to look for the gas meter fee. So in this case, consider this is Dominion Energy Ohio, and $28.14 a month. So this works out to pushing $350 a year, which is enough to oftentimes make the math work on electrification. This is an important thing. You may have no gas meter fee. It may be $5 a month. It may be $15 a month. You need to go find this because remember, that is money you're going to get to use towards the project. So then the next thing you need to do is find ballpark costs for heating and cooling. So you need to find your baseline so you understand you're going to have lights on all year. A little bit more in winter, a little bit less in summer usually, but there's always going to be lights. You're going to have cooking, you're going to have your refrigerator. You need to figure out what the ballpark cost of the air conditioning is. And then for the heat, you need to figure out what the ballpark cost of that is. And the easiest way to figure that out is by looking for the baselines. So for air conditioning, you take summer use and you subtract out winter use and like per month, and that's going to give you a ballpark idea. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And then for heat, in the winter, any use that is above what your summer use is pretty much heat, as long as you just have a furnace. So is this going to be perfect? No, you're going to have to use your head, but at least you'll have an idea. So here's how this works. This is my electric bill here. Now mine is pretty tough to interpret because I bought a Chevy Volt hybrid car in August. So my bills started going up. So I know that I can't trust these last 6 months very much. Or at least I need to know that somewhere between 200 and 300 kilowatt hours a month is going into my car. So I need to keep that in mind. You probably won't have that. But let's take a look at January and July. So in January, we used a little over 400 kilowatt hours. So call that 410, 415, something like that. And then in July, I used 850 or so. So if you subtract those out, that's like 400 kilowatt hours a month for cooling. So if you apply that across those months, you're going to have an idea of how much you're using for cooling. Now that's not that much, like 400 kilowatt hours is $50 a month, something like that. So it's not a huge deal. But you want to have an idea of what that is. So you take your winter usage, and you subtract it from a summer month and try and get a ballpark idea of how much electricity you're using for that. And then for the wintertime, mine's pretty easy because the only two things I have hooked up to gas anymore are the boiler on this house and a gas fireplace. And the gas fireplace, if you look at this little tiny thing here in June, like, hey, there was no heating. What's going on? I'm like, oh, it's the pilot light for my gas fireplace. So I turned it off, and you can see that July and August are 0. But if this was your house, say this little tiny nib in June and September, that would be your water heating costs. So if you have a gas water heater, you can get an idea of how much your water heater uses by looking at your summer usage. So then you take your total annual usage and you multiply the water heating usage by 12, so it goes across the whole year, and subtract it out. So I'm using 185 MCF. This is 1,000 cubic feet. This is pretty close to 1,854 therms. It's not exact. 100 cubic feet, a CCF, is almost exactly a therm. It's like 0.97 to 1.03, something like that. So they're close enough for government work just to consider them the same. So say this is 1,854 therms, and say I was using 20 therms a month for water heating. That means I would subtract 240 therms from this, and that's what I use to heat my house. And then you have an idea of what your heating and cooling usage is. Then, once you have your heating usage, you multiply that times the gas cost. And when you have your cooling usage, you multiply that times your electric cost. And then if you total those, you're going to have a ballpark idea of what it costs to heat and cool your house. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're just trying to get an idea. Now, of course, I have to mention this. Tighter homes make way better electrifications. They also lead to lower operating costs and better comfort. If you want to learn more about those, these are the first 2 chapters of my book, the Home Comfort Book. These are free downloads at NateTheHouseWhisperer.com. So be sure you go check those out, download, and read them. Because if you're planning an electrification project, probably some air sealing and insulation's likely in your future too. Okay, that is it for part 1, where we find out what the current costs are. Next part, we will find out what the future costs are. Join me soon. Thanks.